let's return to the point about Voltaire being a professional writer and being able to live by his writing. This has to do with the changing book market or market in literature, so that we can in fact now talk about a market in literature which you can play, to which you can cater, in which you can get rich.
That's right. And which you can struggle for a life of poverty also. Right. It's a very mixed market that people are struggling to get into. They're competing against each other. It's a liberation from the older pattern for many people where you needed a patron. Mm-hmm. Either you needed to be independently wealthy, pure and simple, or you needed a royal patron, a wealthy patron, a Maecenas, to go back to classical times, and or a church connection. And from the ancient times, literature was mostly written for courts or temples. Right. Now you can actually write for a public market that's neither a directly political nor a directly religious one. And this is very valuable for Voltaire because he's writing very edgy things that are often critical of authoritarianism, whether it is religious or political. He gets thrown into the Bastille early in life. He then gets exiled to England, where he spends 3 years getting very impressed by the English constitutional monarchy, by relative freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and above all by commerce. He says the thing that is making England great and making it a world power is trade, not the kind of thing that we might have seen in Spanish or Portuguese imperialism, where imperial adventures then yield riches. Rather, it is
like gold,
like colonizing, like taking over and getting the gold back, or the spices back from India, as Vasco da Gama was doing for Portugal. Now it is trade enlarges the country, enables it to then have a navy and an army and an empire of trade. And of course, in England, it was the British East India Company in Voltaire's day that was moving in India. It wasn't a government. It was actually a private enterprise. And Voltaire is very interested in private enterprise. He's a great believer of it because it's a check against the autocracy of governments, basically. And in the case of his own work, he increasingly finds that if something he publishes is too hot to handle in Paris, he'll publish it abroad. So the international market becomes very important for him.
And will he publish it in French abroad or also in translation?
Well, this is an interesting thing because you have at this point a very chaotic free market. I mean, free like we don't even think of free anymore.
No unregulated.
Totally unregulated. A fantasy unregulated market for this free market believers. So you have copyright in your work which you sell to a publisher, but that is only where that publisher publishes it in that country. You have no legal rights to your work in translation abroad. So what happens with Voltaire, and you have a huge problem of piracy. Even if it's published same language abroad, if someone else publishes it, they don't owe you anything across that national border. So Voltaire with Candide, 1759, publishes simultaneously in January of 1759 in 4 countries, all in French. So he publishes in Geneva, which is close to where he's based. He publishes in Paris, where it's basically going to be thrown out almost immediately. He publishes also in London and in Amsterdam. And by this means, he protects himself, he protects his publishers. There's no one person any authority can go to. In fact, very interestingly, when it's published on the title page, no author and no publisher is listed. This is radically new.
So it's kind of an anonymous publication.
It's completely anonymous, samizdat almost, but published. And always, as the book market grew up in a couple of centuries previous, always you would have the name of the author and the name of the publisher and where the store is where you can buy it.
Because the publisher often owned the bookstore and it was all one.
Right, there wasn't much distribution. The primary place was to go at the bookstore. So it would say Shakespeare's works are published at so-and-so, at the sign of so-and-so, at the Strand next to so-and-so's place. Will say that it's right on the cover or the title page. So radically, there's no publisher listed and no author, and published in 4 countries. And this means both he evades censorship and also he can hope to depress piracy. He'll hit the market first.
So how was he outed? Did he declare himself as the author at some point?
I think it was an open secret, but as long as he wasn't admitting it openly, he wouldn't get arrested. He was still living in France, so basically he has to a little bit watch it. He's very critical of the Catholic Church and implicitly equally critical of the government. I really think that the critique of the Church is in large part, equally at least, a critique of authoritarian politics under the guise of a religious dispute. So within 6 weeks, the first English translation appears, totally out of Voltaire's control, and they name him by Monsieur de Voltaire, and they say who's publishing it and where on the Strand next to so-and-so. And why is he doing this? Why would someone out the anonymous author?
Well, it seems by this time he's a brand name, right? It might increase sales, and maybe a little scandal can, it's never hurt book publishers.
Exactly. And it's a scandalous French author. It's not that threatening to English sensibilities. He's known to be an Anglophile and a fan of the English system. So precisely, the English publisher doesn't give a damn if Voltaire gets thrown into the Bastille. He's going to make money, none of which Voltaire will make from the English translation. Though Voltaire gets a lot, the book is a true bestseller in a modern sense. The Geneva edition alone sells 20,000 copies in the first year. So he makes a lot of money from his copyright in the French versions in the several countries, but nothing abroad.
He knows the market. He knows the different markets. He knows the financial markets, and he knows the book market, and he plays his hand well.
And in fact, there's a little side note, a little swipe at one of his previous Amsterdam publisher, a guy named Van Duden, who he thinks had cheated him before, and now becomes this like evil little character for one line in Candide.
It's dangerous to pick fights with authors. They can put you in their next.
Exactly. Same thing James Joyce will do centuries later. Voltaire is already doing that, just as a dig at precisely the bookseller who cheated him.
Right.